Okay, guys, I've got to put my glasses on because I can't see anything. I'm an old blind lady. Okay, so let's talk about part 3. There we go. Part 3. All right. Reproductive system, part 3. Okay, so we did part 1, we looked at how the human body can create some special cells that we use essentially to make another human being. So, and that process was the process of meiosis. And then we know the responses and the adaptation of our anatomy and physiology to make sure that those special cells end up at the same place at the same time. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to look at what happens after they meet. Okay, so this is where we left off. We had sperm meeting the egg. So what happens next? Okay. All right. So sperm actually have something called an acrosomal cap, which essentially is like a hat on their heads, okay? Now, that kind of hat contains enzymes, okay? So sperm have enzymes on their inside their little hat which they have on their head. Now, what happens is that those enzymes break through to the inside of the egg, okay? So here's my sperm, okay? Here's my egg nucleus. So I've got my sperm nucleus and my egg nucleus. So the egg and the two nuclei are going to merge, right? Now, when the sperm nucleus enters the egg, that is when the female egg finishes meiosis. If the female egg never meets a sperm, it will never finish the process of meiosis. So here is the sperm. We've chopped off its tail. We don't need that. Here is the sperm nucleus. This is the egg nucleus. We split at this point. And so this is the female nucleus. When it meets the sperm nucleus, it's going to split. So here we are splitting up. We get rid of the bit that we don't want. Okay? So now we've ended up with the sperm nucleus and the egg nucleus, and that's going to combine to create this guy, which is your regular cell, which has one 23 centimetre strip of DNA and another 23 centimetre strip of DNA. It's basically a normal cell. So this part came from your mum and this part came from your dad. And now that is called fertilization, when the sperm nucleus and the egg nucleus finally combine into one nucleus. Okay, so this is where this cell now, this is going to become a human being, this cell, this new cell that we just made. How does that even happen? Well, we make copies of this cell, okay? So we make lots and lots and lots of copies of that particular cell. And also, cells can turn it into other cells. So if I have a stem cell, I can turn that into a fat cell, a bone cell, a neuron, an immune system cell. So mitosis is making exact copies, but we also have this process of differentiation, which means that these cells can become all the different cells of the body. So that's going to end up producing a new human being just by mitosis and cell differentiation. We get all of the different cells of the body. Okay, let's see what happens when after fertilization occurs. Look at it. Here we go. This is the sperm meeting the egg. It happens there. And look, this bit of the uterine tube is not connected to the ovary, just so you know. Anyway, it kind of catches it like a catcher's mitt. Gotcha. All right, here we go. So here is the sperm meeting the egg, and look, once we've made one cell, they turn into two, and those two turn into four, and those four turn into many, many others. And that happens as this little human being makes its way down here. Now, eventually, this mass of cells, which start looking a little bit like this, it has a cavity and a whole bunch of cells on one side. Eventually, it digs into the uterus, okay? So when this little embryo, or I think it's called the fertilized egg, it's actually an embryo at this stage, this little embryo, okay, digs into here, burrows in, and that's where it's going to stay and grow. So this burrowing in activity is called implantation. And some people actually can feel it when that happens. It can actually cause a little bit of pain. But just so you know, it happens about a week after fertilization. Now, you've probably heard the term ectopic pregnancy. So if a pregnancy is ectopic, it means that the little embryo has implanted in the wrong spot, okay? Now, this is a problem because if it starts to grow in the wrong spot, it can actually push a lot of the stuff or a lot of the anatomy of the mum. It can push on it and it'll outgrow its confines. So that's what it means when it's an ectopic pregnancy, that the little embryo should have burrowed in here or there, just on either side of the uterus. If it's actually burrowed in somewhere else, it shouldn't be there, okay? It can pose a risk. Right. So the placenta is actually one of my favorite organs because of its beautiful engineering, and it's just an amazing, the way that it works, it's absolutely amazing. So placenta, I thought I had some animations for this. Oops, no I didn't. I'll just stop it there for a second. Okay, so I wanted my animations because they're important. So let's think about how the placenta works. So here is your uterus. So the placenta lies next to the uterus. So how it works is that you've got blood from mum coming in. So there's blood supply coming in. Then the blood sits around this particular area. Okay, so blood comes in, gets dumped there and hangs around this area. Then blood goes back out again. So this is mum's blood. Blood comes in, hangs around here for a while, then blood leaves again next to the uterus. Then we've got the baby. So how is the baby going to get things from mum's blood? Well, the baby has a blood vessel that leaves its body. It hangs around mum's blood, okay? So the blood leaves the baby, picks up stuff from mum's blood, and then blood returns to the baby again, okay? Now, what we need to understand, though, is that the blood, baby's blood and mother's blood do not mix at all. So there is a space between where mum's blood is and where the baby's blood is. Okay, So the connection between the mum and the embryo is via the umbilical cord. So this is where the blood vessels sit, the umbilical cord. And how do things move across? So how do things move from here to here? Well, by diffusion, which you know about, and also by transport proteins. So in your tutorial, you're going to do an activity about what crosses and what doesn't cross the placenta. But just for now, just understand how things move, and mum and baby's blood never ever mix. Okay? There is a very, very tightly controlled mechanism by which we get things from mum's blood to the baby's blood and vice versa. Here is another picture of the placenta. As you can see, you've got mum's blood coming in, mum's blood coming out. So this is where the mum's blood is sitting. Here is the space. Okay, this is the space, and these are the blood vessels of the baby. Okay, blood coming out of the baby, and then blood coming back into the baby. And that's another picture. So I just thought I want you to understand conceptually how the placenta works before looking at anything more complicated.